So, ma'am, thanks for joining us today on Leadership Log, which is a podcast for the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center community on topics of interest. And the topic of interest today is meeting you, Emily Farley, the Chief Venture Officer for the ISR SOF Directorate. So, ma'am, if you could just introduce yourself to the audience and give us a little bit of your career background.
Yes, sir. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be on this podcast. And just a little bit about me. I am, as you said, the Chief Venture Officer for ISR and SOF. And really what that means is, hey, we've been tasked to innovate. We got to accelerate, change or lose. And that is my job. Let's figure out how to do that. Let's set some metrics. Let's get some plans in the works and let's see if we can actually make that happen. So that about kind of sums up what I'm doing. I've got a lot of goals that happen underneath that, but really, it's let's go faster with speed and discipline. Let's get some good things to the warfighter and make sure that we stay far ahead of what now is our near peers. And the reason that I got this role is a couple of reasons. My background actually starts in Mississippi. I graduated from Mississippi State, but immediately moved to New York City. Had a little bit of experience in finance before I jumped over to the entrepreneurial scene. It was awesome. I worked for 5 years at an international startup. And after 5 years, I thought, you know what? I think I can do this myself. And then I switched over, learned the School of Hard Knocks, my own venture. I had a paleo bakery actually in New York City. And it was really awesome. But I understand, because I went to the School of Hard Knocks, what some of these small businesses really struggle with. They've got a really great product and they want to partner with the military, but there are all these challenges and they kind of don't understand that next step. So I have that understanding. And then when I switched over to the military, I came on as a civilian in USAF in the helicopter program office in FM for just a couple of years, just to get my hands going before I got plucked out and put in this position that I'm so blessed to have. And I rely a lot on that background pre-USAF because I do a lot of industry engagement to see, hey, can we be innovative by partnering with some of these small businesses? And you know what, if they have trouble getting into that partnership, what can I do to help them out to see if we can really collaborate on a greater scale and move faster and get something to the warfighter faster?
So you mentioned faster several times, and it was interesting. I read recently there were some people from Silicon Valley that were talking about how the government needs to move faster. Specifically, the Air Force needs to move faster in awarding contracts. Otherwise, a lot of the venture capital goes away. And so is that kind of the stuff that you're looking for? Is ways that we can kind of get to that quicker?
Yes, sir. Well, there's really two aspects that I'm looking at when I innovate. So we're looking at one, what are the capabilities that we're delivering to the warfighter? Can we get them more innovative capabilities? And then the process of getting it to them, can we get that faster? Now, there's different ways that we can go about that. Part of that is on the SPO side, on the program office side. Can we set ourselves up in a way so we can capitalize on opportunities better that are presented, whether they come from inside the Air Force or outside the Air Force? And then the other side of that is, of course, the capability. So you actually have the warfighter capability, but then we have the processes internally. Like I said, are we setting ourselves up to be able to take care of these or capture these opportunities? And some of that doesn't really have anything to do specifically and directly with a warfighter capability. It's what do our processes look like? What does our software look like? Are we taking advantage of the tools that we already have? Are there too many tools? What can we do to make sure that we are set up to, one, sense, seize, and capture opportunities, and then two, respond when something comes on the news? We're not scared about it, because even if we say we don't have a capability to come against that, we know that we can come up with one pretty quickly.
Right. So I like to look back to when COVID happened and we all had to go into this distributed operations thing. And for the first week, it was kind of murder, because you couldn't get anything done. You couldn't get on the network. You couldn't, we didn't have the tools. We didn't have any of that. But everybody flexed pretty quickly and figured out ways to get around this pretty fast. And I remember one specific example was the contractors. They had a system that only operated on the network. And these guys figured out a way to use a remote connection application to connect into that so that they could still keep our contracts awarded. And they were able to maintain their numbers exactly they had been before we went into that. So we can be innovative, Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, do you think that this, the whole telework thing has pushed us to be a little more creative in our solutions?
Absolutely, 100%. I think that I mean, if we just even look at the news, there are so many of our challenges that come digitally, and so this has really forced us to move in that direction in a greater scale. And even on the smaller things, like understanding that we are vulnerable at every single level, and this has really forced us in a really big way to look at every single one of those on a process side and try to address those. But we can also use what we've learned for that to the capability side and say, hey, can we share some lessons learned there and make sure that our warfighter in the field can capitalize on what we've learned there.
Yeah. And your directorate, so your portfolio plays a big role in command and control systems, all right? The ability to share information. And so whatever the new ABMS ends up looking like, your sensors are going to have a big part in that. So how are you looking at kind of like cutting across the lines, the traditional kind of stovepipes to share information better, to be a little more seamless?
Gotcha. So that is exactly one of the main goals of my position, is to say, hey, how can we strengthen that network both inside WI and then outside of WI? So there's a couple of things that we've done. We've set up a SharePoint site that says, here are all the things innovation. People keep telling you to be innovative, but they aren't exactly always giving you a clear-cut list of tools and resources that you need. So we try to have that one-stop shop for that. Within that SharePoint site, there is an industry engagement tracker, and there's also an innovation tools tracker. So we're just trying to share, hey, these are all the different industry engagements that have come across our plate. Here are some really incredible tools that somebody within our own directorate have come up with that's helped them in their day-to-day life. Let's try to share those. And here's also some challenges that we face. Is there any way that other people are there other people who are sharing those challenges? Let's see if we can all tackle that together. So we use SharePoint a lot. We're using Teams a really good bit for that. I personally host calls about once a month where I go over all of these things to make sure that people know everything that's happening if it relates to them, because I can't know every single detail. There are so many things happening across our portfolio. Let them know, hey, these are all of the things that have come across our plate. If you want to jump in, let's go. Let's at least take that next step to get more information. The other thing that I'm doing is we're hosting offsites. So even with RDIF, so the Rapid Development Integration Facility, that does sit within our portfolio, but a lot of people don't know about it. So I host offsites, get people in the building and say, hey, here is a resource. You connect directly to them. Cut me out of it. Let's get me out of a job here. Let's introduce you to them. Let's introduce you to the people at RSO. So every individual in the programs has that direct connection, and then they can move forward. So it's really about knowledge and then building out that network.
Yeah, it's communication horizontally across the organization. That's always been our problem. It's just something that we just don't do very well.
Right.
And so you're playing a cost cutter role.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And part of that really is honestly to build out that network and to make those connections outside of myself. Let me, foster this relationship, see what I can do to really strengthen it, and then get out of the way and then let you do your own thing.
Okay. So how do you reach out to people? So, there's been plenty of times where people have come to and said, hey, tell us your ideas, tell us what you think, and people share their ideas and then they never see it go anywhere. So how do you kind of keep the energy going in something like this?
It's kind of tough. People look at the red tape and it comes to a point where they're like, I don't even know if I want to go after this anymore. And in the beginning, when I first got in this role in February, March, I had a lot of that come to me, and I have seen it go down a little bit. And what I'm finding is, again, you hit the nail on the head with the communication. I am literally setting up conversations, one-on-ones with as many people across the directorate that I can, just to say, hey, what is happening? And what is happening with you in your role and in your program? What is your big vision for it? Where are you right now? And then how can I help you cross that gap? And those individual conversations have led to so much fruit, not only opportunities to take better advantage of sippers and sitters, but again, sharing those tools that people have created, being able to get those tools in my hands, get it out there for other people to use, and just capitalize on that and then make the connections that need to be made. It's just talking to people, and that's all it is.
Yeah. Another challenge that we often see is when you come up with an idea, there's somebody there to tell you, well, there's this AFI tells you that you can't do that, okay, or this program here says that you're not allowed to, or you have to do this first, or you've got to, you know, coordinate to this level. So how do you create kind of this? How can we, in a positive mindset, find solutions rather than always look for ways to stop it?
That is a really, really great question. First and foremost, I put myself out there as, if you just have an idea, just come to me. And, you know, I will do the heavy lifting. I will do the hard work. If you run into a roadblock, the answer is never, okay, I give up. That is the stop. Because you know what, we're coming across into, if we really want to innovate, we have to look at policy. So we need to know, is this something that should be changed in policy, or is this actually something where we need to change in our approach? So really just trying to get it out there that if you run into a roadblock, if you ever have the question of, man, this could be easier, or man, I really wish that someone would ... reach out to me. And so I put it out there to say, let me do the heavy lifting. Let me help you. Please do not see one roadblock and then just move on.
Yeah. You know, it seems like so many times some of these rules just became kind of institutionalized. And so it's just always been that way. And you don't recognize that maybe technology has made that now pointless, you know? So you got to look for those kinds of things as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I have come across a couple of ideas that people have that were stopped by policy, that were stopped by rules. And it's one of those things where we're trying to dig in and say, okay, you know, what do we need to do? And I'm willing to put in that hard work if I can remove some of those roadblocks, if they need to be removed. Yeah. Some things are there for a very good reason.
Yeah, that's true. And so how is the leadership support then? I mean, because especially when you run into policy issues, that requires a lot of times support from above.
Yes, sir. So leadership, some of the policy things that we're looking into, it's really at the beginning stages. But that is also part of my job description from the get-go, is like, hey, you know, if there are policy changes that need to be made, you're actually expected to raise those concerns in front of us. So from the beginning, they have put it out there. You figure out what needs to happen and come to us. And, you know, we've got your back, you know, if it's the right thing to do, of course. So they're all about being innovative and clearing the path for everyone.
Cool. So what are some success stories that you've ran across so far?
Oh, goodness. We have a good number. Let's see. Our very first offsite, we went to the Grill. Have you heard of the Gaming Research Lab?
Yes.
Incredible. It's attached to this STEM school. I believe his name is Lieutenant Bucklew, is the one that kind of runs the show over there. And it is just really awesome. They have a bunch of students that come in there, and they play all these online games and do all this really fun online activity. And the Air Force is actually using that information to learn what can we do digitally. Well, I hosted an offsite there, and several people came, and they had a really cool prototype there in-house. And one of the people from our MQ9 program looked at it and said, oh my gosh, this would change our training. This would change maintenance. We have to get a hold of this. And that was a couple of months ago. And this has already progressed to, you know, it's been approved by their board. They're having conversations with the RSO to see if this is something that could be developed for their sustainment and could be used across USAF. I mean, those conversations are progressing. There has been thousands of dollars spent on it, and it looks like it's still moving forward in a big way. So that was a really big win.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Yes, sir.
What else?
Let's see. Let's see. What are some of the other things? Sorry, you're throwing me off here. What are some? No, that's okay. I should have some of these come to mind. Some other big wins. You know, okay. So we just had one of our teammates went through the Defense Ventures Fellowship Program. And let me tell you, one of the biggest things that came out of that is how fired up he is to be a part of innovation, to really spur innovation in USAF. So his name is Captain Brent. He was a part of the Hermes startup. He was a part of looking at all of their stuff and seeing, you know, hey, what does a small business do on their side? What can they do to, better provide solutions for the USAF, and also what do we need to do on the USAF side to make sure that we can take advantage of those opportunities that we want to. And he just got out of that. He did a briefing to the entire directorate. He's got a briefing coming up with some of the other leadership, and then what he is planning to do with all that information that he learned. I mean, he's already got all of these things in the works that he wants to take for his program in WII, and also maybe to help some other folks out who want to kind of be a part of this thing. He's really a champion for that. And you know what, we'll see some of the fruit in the future because it's just happened like a week or two ago. But honestly, just the fact that he's fired up on an individual level to make things happen is a really big win, because you don't always find those innovation champions who are willing to put in the work, across the board. So it's really, really nice to see.
Okay. So that kind of brings us to the end of our time. But before we close off, I just want to see, is there anything that I didn't ask you about or anything else that you'd like to share?
Let me see. You know what? I would like to share just a little bit about innovation. First of all, our leadership is so great. It was really Colonel Rogers and Miss Pride, the DPEO at the time, who said, we've got this directive from General Brown. We got to accelerate, change, or lose. We had Dr. Roper, who was really a proponent for this. And they said, okay, we can see the future. We see down the road, we have to head in this direction. And they created this, and I've been part of an AFLCMC innovation crosstalk. And there are groups popping up all across AFLCMC. And then we have CDX, that is the innovation arm for AFMC. And then even what AFWorks is doing, we're all still coming together. We're trying to figure out, okay, what are the lessons learned here? What are the best practices and standards that we can set, not only for ourselves, but for the future? And the innovation community is small, but it's growing, and we're getting stronger. And we're really out there trying to figure out what can we do best to propel the force forward? How can we truly, generally take steps that is seen in warfighter capabilities, that is seen in getting it to the field faster, that is seen in budget cuts, that is just seen in us being ahead of the game, so much so that people don't even want to, come against us. Like, it is preventative what we have out in the field. And it's a really awesome team to be a part of at a greater level. And so I just want to say, if you hear the word innovation, it is not just a buzzword. I understand that it's all encompassing. There's some awesome things happening. I feel honored to be a part of it. And if anybody has any questions at all about it, they can always reach out to me anytime. I'm here to answer those questions and connect them with any of my contacts, if that would be of service.
That sounds great. Hey, I really appreciate your time today and helping us understand what a Chief Venture Officer does.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate your time.